Hello, in the previous lecture you were able to build this map with multiple markers. This map happens to have only two markers, but you get the idea. And the script was this one here, so you can add as many coordinate pairs as you want in here. But in this lecture I want to show you how to add pairs of coordinates out of a text file, which is this one here, volcanoes.txt. If you like, you can just rename the name of this from volcanoes.txt to volcanoes.csv, and then you can open it in a program such as Excel. If you like, you can show it on a plain text file as I'm doing in here. Python can read both CSV and text files. So what we have here are some data about volcanoes. Basically, we have the number of the volcano, which is some sort of ID. So volcano 020. We have yet another number then. And as you see, every column, so we have columns in this data file, and every column is separated by a comma. This is the name of the first column, the first value of this first column is this one here. Then is the name of the second column. The first value of the second column is this one here. Then the second value of the second column is this, and so on. And then we have the name column, the name of the volcano in here. The name is here, Baker, and then the comma starts here, which means that location is this one here, US Washington. Then we have the status historical for the first volcano. And then we have the elevation, which is this one in here. I'm not sure whether these are in feet or meters, but you can find that out. If you're curious, you can do a research for this particular volcano and compare the elevation. Anyway, then we have the type of the volcano. You have the time frame, which is D3. I'm not sure what this means. D4. And so then lastly, this is where we're interested about. We have the lat and lon columns. So this is lat, which means latitude, and this is longitude of the volcano. So you need these two numeric values in order to map the features, so the volcanoes, into a map, in this case into a volume map. So this has around 63, actually 62, 63 including the header of the data. And so how do we load this file into Python? Well, to load that file into Python, let me clear the terminal. And you'd first need to install a very useful library called pandas. We're going to use this library later on, so I'm not going to explain pandas in detail for now, because we were just using one or two of its functions, which I'll explain in this lecture. So go ahead and install pandas if you don't have pandas. Pip install pandas or pip3 install pandas, depending on how you have configured Python. And then you can go ahead and open a Python session. Import pandas. And the way to load a file with pandas is by pointing to pandas.read CSV volcanoes.txt. Make sure that your Python session has been opened in the directory where your volcanoes.txt file is. So for instance, my session is inside mapping folder, which is this one here, so I can just pass the file name. Otherwise, you may have to pass the absolute path of the file, which starts from like C// and so on, depending on what operating system you are in. And execute that and call data, and you get the data printed out. Just like that. And so pandas is able, actually the read CSV method is able to distinguish between these commas, where the commas are, and so it creates a well-structured data format with columns. So if you go down here, So you have some columns here, column, 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 and then up to the end. And then you have other columns because Python cannot print out. Actually, the terminal doesn't allow you to have all the columns in one inside with this area here because it would be too much. Anyway, you have status, elevation, type, time frame, lat, and lon. So that's about the data. Now you need to figure out a way to iterate through that data frame. So this is called a data frame. So the data object is called a data frame. You can check its type actually. Pandas core frame data frame. So what I'm thinking of is to actually create two lists out of these data frame columns. So to put the latitude column in a Python list and the longitude column in another Python list. And so that we have a native Python object, which is a list, and then we can iterate through that list using the for loop. So let me try to do that. Import pandas, and then create the data frame object. So loading the data, read csv volcanoes.txt, and yeah, that's it. So how do we convert a data frame column into a list? Well, the way to do that is by just doing, let's say L or lat equals to data, and then the name of the column, which is lat. So you can get a list of columns, by the way, by doing data.columns. Here you see you have a lat and a long column. Then you do lat equals to list data lon in square brackets, close it. And so what you did here is data with the lon attribute there will return a series object, but that series object we are converting it into a native list. So that will be a Python list. This will also show up as a similar object. So this is a series object, and this is a list, but I prefer to work on a list because working on lists is faster than working on data frame series. So the idea is to have two lists here. That equals to list data lon. Copy that, paste it here, and the same thing goes for longitude. So lon, lat, and lon lists. So now we need to be careful here on how we iterate through these two lists, because you know what we have is we have two lists, and each of them has 62 items. You can check that using len here, down here, lat. So it has 62 items, and the same goes for the longitude list. That means that the first item of the latitude list corresponds to the second item of the latitude list. Of the longitude list. So the first two items make up the first location of the first marker. That means that in the first iteration we need to extract both locations. So actually this sort of structure won't be appropriate anymore. What you need to do is you need to go through, let's say, lat and lon variables. When you iterate through two lists at the same time, you need to use the zip function, and then it goes lat and lon. So basically what this function does is like this. Let's say for I, j in zip, let's say the first list is 1, 2, 3, and the second is 4, 5, 6. print I and J. So this is what happens. This loop will go through these two lists at the same time. So what happens is that I will go through the first item of the first list, while J will go through the first item of the second list. And so in the first iteration, 1 and 4 are extracted. So 1 here and 4 here. And you can do such an extraction by using the zip function. Otherwise, you won't be able to do that if you don't use the zip function. So zip sort of distributes the items one by one. And so the same goes here. LT will get the first item of this list. L1 will get the first item of this list. And then here, what you need to do is you need to construct a list with LT and LN. Yeah, that's it. Save the script, go to the terminal to execute. It's not here, the terminal. I'll just exit that. Python 3 map1.py execute. No errors. Go to Firefox and reload. And I've got no markers for some reason, but I didn't get an error. So this is one of those scenarios where you don't get an error in the terminal. So in that case, you need to double check your code carefully. So data pandas 3 CSV lat list data long. Here's the error. So what's happening is that I'm assigning the wrong column to the latitude list. So let me change the order and try again. So don't get intimidated by errors. Errors happen all the time. You just need to be cold-blooded and read the errors if you get any error here, and also look at the code carefully. And let me reload. I've got some markers now. So these are the locations of the volcanoes in US actually, United States. Okay. They also have this pop-up, which is working well, but I assume you don't like it very much because it's not showing any information. So what we need to do here is to actually make this pop-up dynamic so that it shows some actual information. And I'll show you how to create dynamic pop-ups in the next video. Talk to you there.